Hi, I'm here in Thermopylae, Greece, and as a history buff, I just had to come here when I was in Greece. The Battle of Thermopylae is one of the most famous battles in all of history, and it was a battle between King Leonidas and his Spartan forces, well trained but vastly outnumbered against the vastly superior numbers of the Persian Empire led by King Xerxes. And this was all made famous in the movie The 300. And so I'm here and I'm thinking about this battle, and I'm thinking about what lessons we can learn and apply to our businesses or organizations today. And if you're not familiar with the story, you had King Leonidas and his well-trained army knew exactly the terrain here. And in back of me is King Leonidas, and his back of me is the mountain pass where him and his 300 soldiers basically held off the Persian army. How did they do that? Well, a couple things that we can learn from this engagement here are a couple things. King Leonidas and the Spartans, they knew their strengths and they knew their weaknesses well. They were well trained, well organized. They knew the land, but they also knew their weaknesses, that they could not match numerically the superior force of the Persians. So they knew themselves well. Number two is they understood their enemy, or in business terms, their competitor. They understood that they weren't as well trained. They weren't as well armed. They didn't know the terrain, so they took advantage of that. And then number three lesson that we can learn from the Battle of Thermopylae here is how they took advantage of their strengths and their weaknesses. So they lured them into that narrow mountain pass that they knew. They understood that on how their tactics could overwhelm the Persian soldiers, and they also understood the landscape and that narrow pass, and they also understood that when you're trying to protect something that's local, you will typically care more about that than someone from the outside. So how do we apply that to what we have today? So I was part of a small business, physical rehabilitation business. I helped grow that to the largest independent outpatient provider in the state. And then what we did was we did a deal with a large national coast-to-coast rehab company. And some of the things that I learned in that is I understand how the small providers work, I understand how the national providers work. And in a day and age where you see these large providers coming in and buying out smaller providers, there is an opportunity for smaller providers today to do well, I believe, against the larger players. So here's what I would say to you is understand your strengths and weaknesses, just like the Spartans did. What are those? Do you have local referral sources? Do you have relationships? Do you have specialties that you can bring to bear? And understand the strengths and weaknesses of your larger competitors. They're not as nimble at times. They may have more resources, but they're not as nimble. And they typically will not put as many resources and will not care as much about a local market as you will. And sometimes there's a mindset out there that sometimes because you're smaller, it doesn't make you as good as some of these national players. And I would argue, being on both sides of this, and now working in my consulting practice with small and large organizations, I would say that you as a smaller provider oftentimes have a lot more advantages than you believe, than your national competitors, very similar to the Spartans against the Persians. And so I would love to help you. I'm working with clients right now on the smaller side. How do they take advantage of their strengths? How do they minimize their weaknesses? And how do they take advantages of the weaknesses of their competitors to build a really strong business and in their locale? And that's something that I can help you with, and I'd love to do that. So look for more videos on my YouTube channel that will impact and help accelerate your business or organization.